Good evening to all of you once again. My name is Arvind, and I'm here to conduct this webinar for all of you here on the last minute preparation tips to maximize your performance on GMAT Quant. I hope all of you are able to see me on the screen, and I hope my voice is loud and clear. So if there are any technical issues that any of you are facing, please make sure that you let me know on the chat window. And yes, so this is a webinar that is going to be relevant for a lot of you people, considering that we are getting nearer to the deadlines for the first round applications for a lot of Indian B schools, and also quite a few of those foreign B schools. This will become very relevant for you because I understand that a lot of you here on this webinar have probably put in about 2 to 3 months of preparation of having undergone maybe live sessions, or you've taken online courses, you've done self-prep mostly based on books that you've purchased or courses that you've taken up. And this last month is like the culmination of all the efforts that you have put in, right? And this is the last mile, the last leg of the race. And this is where you'll have to hold your nerve and do the right thing at the right time, so that all the effort that you put in over the last 2-3 months will finally bear fruit, and give you the target score that you're having on your mind. So before we start off, a quick look into who I am. My name is Arvind. I've been teaching for CrackVerbal for the last 2 years and a little over that. I've been a teacher for the last 14 years or so. I've taught different exams, taught students to take up different exams: CAT, GMAT, GRE, banking exams, the law exams. So in some way, I'm in this profession by choice. This is something that I enjoy doing. Some of you on this session have already been on my sessions, and I'm sure you will realize the kind of passion I have towards teaching. I have taken some of the exams myself. I've long back, when GRE was like a question adaptive test, I had taken the GRE Quant. I had taken the GRE and I got a perfect score on Quant and a decent score on Verbal. I've taken the CAT multiple times, gone the 96th percentile on most occasions. Yeah, and that's a quick peek into who I am. Yes, before we go any further, a few simple ground rules. During the session, as the session is going on, use the chat window to post your general queries. The chat window will be at the bottom half of your screen. So please use the chat window. Do not use the Q&A box as the webinar is going on. And although I encourage questions, try as much as possible to hold on to your questions till I complete saying whatever I am saying, just to avoid context switching. And I will give you time to ask your questions. So hold on to your questions, maybe write them down in a book. I hope all of you have a pen and paper handy to maybe solve a few questions that I have on this webinar, to maybe make notes of the points that we're going to discuss. So that's where you can write down your questions. And after the session, there will be a Q&A segment. You can then post your questions in the Q&A window, and I'll be happy to answer any question that you post. Also, I'd like to run a few polls. So I want all of you to be as participative as possible on the polls. Most of these polls are general questions. I don't have polls where the right answer matters. In fact, there is no right answer on most of the polls. These polls are meant for me to get the feel of the audience that I'm talking to, the kind of students that are there on this webinar, so that I can help you derive the maximum out of this webinar. So please be participative on the polls. So the agenda for the session, like I have 5 main points to cover. I'm not kind of stuffed this webinar with a lot of detail. I've kind of condensed all the content that I wanted to cover into 5 broad buckets. And I think every point will probably take us about 5 to 10 minutes to discuss. And therefore, I am estimating that this webinar will probably go on till about 8:30, 8:40, 8:45 tops, nothing more, nothing less. So I'd request all of you to kind of keep your notifications on hold, especially the mobile notifications, because those can bring in a lot of disruptions and context switching can happen. You might just miss out on what I just said. We might have to go around in circles. So I request all of you to focus for the next 70 minutes and we'll be done by then. All right. Okay, so before I go any further, people, I'll just want some of you to answer a few polls for me. So let's start with the polls. All right. So launching the first poll that I want you to answer. Please go ahead on this poll. I'll give you all like 30 seconds to post your answer. These are not difficult questions to answer. So try as much as possible to do it quickly. And just to, conserve my bandwidth, by now I've put a face to the voice. So I'll just stop my video just so that there is no lag or there are no technical issues, right? I'll come back on screen a little later during the webinar. Okay. Go ahead, guys. I want 100% number of you voting. Okay. So a vast majority of you here on this session are students of CrackVerbal. That's good to know. But it's also good to have the 17% of you who would like to explore what we offer. That's great, people. We would like to showcase what we have on offer, and we believe that we have the wherewithal to make a difference in your GMAT preparation. All right. Maybe another question for you to answer on the poll. All right. So just to give me a context and help me to benchmark some of you into different categories, I'd like to know how long you have been prepping for the GMAT. You don't have to say, okay, I've been preparing for like 47.5 days. Just a range is enough. All right, I see that some of you are not able to see the poll. Might be a technical issue at your end. So I'd recommend that you check your connections once. All right. Okay, so these are your results. Okay, so almost half of you on this webinar have been preparing for the last 3 to 6 months. So that essentially means you started off when lockdown started, and hopefully you've done a lot of work by now, and hoping that this is the last mile run for you. Okay, a fair percentage you've been preparing for the last 1 to 2 months, less than 1 month, 90%. Okay, all right. Okay. The third question. This is an easy question to answer for a lot of you. Maybe difficult for some of you who are like sitting on the fence. But for most of you, I think it's a clear yes or a clear no. All right, so that's almost all of you have voted here. Okay, so there seems to be a lot going against the online exam. Half of you exactly say a no, but people who don't mind taking the exam are not far behind. Okay, that's good to know. There's nothing too wrong with the online exam, right? Just that you'll have to take care of the technical things. You just have to make sure that you are in the right place at the right time. Okay, my last question on the poll. In some way directly related to what we are going to discuss today. And also something that will end up affecting your applications to a large extent. Of course, it finally depends on what score you get on the GMAT, but I think you'll also have to make up your mind on the date, at least on a probable date, or at least a probable date range. All right. Okay. All right. So about more than half of you here on this webinar are planning to take it in at least in the next 1 month. I'm assuming that with a buffer of let's say 10 days, a lot of you will end up taking it in the middle of November. Some of you may end up taking it towards the end of middle of October. I'm sorry, and some of you might end up taking it towards the end of October. That means, yeah, a small percentage of you might push it beyond October in case you're not targeting some of the round one deadlines, which makes sense. Makes sense to take the GMAT ones and get done with it rather than keep on taking it multiple times. Makes sense. Thanks a lot, people. Thanks a lot for being such a participative audience in answering the polls. So let's get started with the session. So who will benefit from this session? I mean, the answer to this is quite obvious, but I just thought I would clarify. From my perspective, I feel people who will benefit from this session are clearly people who are taking it in the next 1 month or 40 days. But I also feel that if you are to benefit from this session, right, there are some prerequisites that you should have done, right? You should have completed all the verbal and the quant questions. So when I say all, I mean all, and most verbal and most quant does not qualify. So this is a prerequisite. You can't expect to take the GMAT in the next 40 days not having done the official guide questions fully, right? Because the official guide questions, there are almost like about 850 to 900 questions, which are like pure gold for anyone who's preparing for the GMAT. They give you a sense of how an official question feels when you solve it. What are the data points given? How are the traps framed? How are the options designed? And what kind of difficulty level you can see on 600 level questions, 650 level questions, 700 level questions. So there are so many things that you can learn by just solving questions from the official guide. And it's a definite no-no. Taking the test in the next 40 days is a definite no-no if you have not completed all the OG questions. You will also benefit from this webinar if you have like taken up a lot of sectional tests from our testing platform. Preferably all the easy and the intermediate should be done. If a few are pending, that's okay. You should also have taken up at least one or two mock tests by now, which would have told you where you stand at this particular stage and how much more distance you have to cover to get your target score. You should also, some of you may have also completed the time drills from the quant review and the verbal review books. Considering that we have a lot of people who want to take it in the next 15 to 20 days, right? So some of you may have completed the quant review and the verbal review books as well. And all of this taken together means that you have good knowledge about most of the core concepts tested on GMAT Quant, right? Only if you are ticking this box will this webinar help you. If you are still in the stage where you say, okay, Arvind, I know a lot of concepts, but there are still gray areas with some other concepts in quant, this webinar will end up helping you a little later in your journey maybe. And of course, the last point is very obvious. If you have planned to take the GMAT in the next 1 month, you will definitely benefit from this session, right? So I hope a lot of you on this webinar, I saw the polls. Almost 60% of you say that you'll be taking up the GMAT in the next month or so, months to 40 days. So I hope a lot of you have ticked at least like 3 to 4 boxes here. If you come back and tell me, Arvind, I have not taken the mock test, I plan to take it this weekend, that's okay. If you say, no, Arvind, I have a few sectional tests left from the easy and the intermediate level, I will get done with them maybe in the next 4 or 5 days, that's okay. If you say I'm still doing the last few drills from the review books, that's okay. But a majority of you, right, should have ticked a lot of these boxes. That's when this webinar will actually end up making a lot more sense to you, right? So in some way, I'm kind of qualifying a lot of you. So if Abhishek, as you see, if you're a beginner, it's not that this webinar will not benefit me at all, or benefit you at all, right? It's just that there is no harm in staying back and looking at what could be the last mile prep that you will have to undertake maybe in a month's time or maybe in a couple of months' time from now, right? All right. So just to start off proceedings, um, being the faculty that I am, being the quant faculty that I am, I don't find a better way to start off at least this proceedings than giving you a question. So why don't we solve this question? I'll give you some time. You go ahead, solve it the best way you know to solve it, and tell me what the answer is. So let's have a 2-minute timer. Since we all know that most of you end up taking 2 minutes on a question on the GMAT on an average. Okay, your time starts now. No, guys, I don't have a poll for the question. You can solve it. And after 2 minutes, I'll ask you to post your answers in the chat box itself. So Parthivi, if you have the GMAT in the next 2 days, I would be recommending you to stay back for probably the next 20-30 minutes, wherein I'll be covering the first segment. And after that, if you don't have anything else to take away, you can take a call at that stage. Okay, one more minute. Sanket, if you've got an answer, please hold on till I ask you to post your answers because the others are still solving. There's still almost 30 minutes to go, 30 seconds to go. All right, people, that's 2 minutes. You can now post your answers in the chat box. And hold on for another 30 seconds, by which time most of you would have posted your answers. So I see a lot of C's coming up as an answer. I saw a few A's at the start. Okay, I see a solitary D, I see a E. So it's like I've got most answers except B. Okay, there we have a B as well. Okay. All right. So the reason for me to put this question here is to tell a lot of you that if you think you've put in about 2.5 months of preparation, um, you've probably gone through the live sessions, you've attended classrooms, maybe a little earlier before the lockdown, and you were preparing using the official guide uh, through the last 3 to 4 months. You've taken up an online course probably, or you referred to some books by yourself and you've done self preparation, right? All this preparation should help you solve this question, right? This is a 600 to 700 level question, right? In my opinion. And if you're not able to solve this question, it probably means that the last 3 months of preparation that you have put in still requires some polishing to be done before you say, okay, I'm ready for the last leg of the race, right? Now, how do we solve this? So if p cube is divisible by 80, so I know p cube divided by 80 is an integer. That's what the statement means. P cube is divisible by 80. Then the positive integer p must have at least how many distinct factors? Now, I know the number p is a positive integer. If p is a positive integer, p cube has to be a perfect cube. So what am I saying here? I'm saying p is a positive integer, p cube is a perfect cube, and I'm saying that this perfect cube is divisible by 80. So I'm looking at p cube equal to 80 into an integer. Remember, one very important property of a perfect cube is that it will always have the power as 3 for the prime factors, right? So for example, if you look at like 27, 27 is 3 power 3. So the power here is a multiple of 3. If you have a number like 64, 64 is 2 power 6. So the power here is a multiple of 3 again. If you have a 216, you would have a 2 power 3 into 3 power 3. So whenever you have a perfect cube, remember the powers of the prime factors will always be a multiple of 3. So if you prime factorize 80, you would get 2 power 4 multiplied by 5. Now 2 power 4 multiplied by 5, the power here is not a multiple of 3, and this is 5 power 1. So this is not a multiple of 3. So which means for p cube to be a perfect cube, right, we need this integer to give us some more 2's and some more 5's. So how many more 2's do we require so that the power becomes a multiple of 3? We require a 2 square, right, and a 5 square. So this is what we want the integer to be. Can the integer be something else? Can there be some other values? It can be like a 2 power 5 multiplied by a 5 power 5. Right? Because 2 power 5 into 2 power 4 would be 2 power 9. 5 power 5 into 5 power 1 would be 5 power 6. Can it be like 2 power 2 into 5 power 2 into 7 cube? It can be that, right? But as Shailendra said, we need to look at minimizing the number of prime numbers that we use, because the question clearly asks us P must have at least how many distinct factors. Therefore, we ignore all the other cases that we're talking of, right? And conclude that P cube has to be 2 power 4, rather 2 power 6 into 5 power 3. So what is the answer for this question now? So how many P must have at least how many distinct factors? Okay, so if you are not able to answer this question, you will also not be able to find out the error in this question. The number of factors, is there an error in this question, by the way? Any chance? Or are we good? So at this stage, if you're thinking, hey, the number of factors of this number is 6 plus 1 into 3 plus 1, you need to take a step back and understand we are looking at the factors of P and not the factors of P cube, right? Don't make that mistake. Exactly. So it's very, very common for students at this stage, especially when you're under pressure, it's very, very common for you to look at 6 and 3 and say, okay, this number has 18 factors and I don't see a 18 in the options. You don't require an 18 because you're trying to find the number of factors of P. So P is nothing but 2 square into 5 power 1. So the number of factors would be 2 plus 1 into 1 plus 1. 2 plus 1 is a 3, 1 plus 1 is a 2, 3 2s are 6. The correct answer is C for Charlie. So as you saw here, this question, although this is a 600 to 700 level question, this question tested you on multiple concepts. You had to know that if P is a positive integer, P cube has to be a perfect cube. You had to know this part. You also had to know that a perfect cube will always have the powers as multiple of 3. And you also had to know how to find the number of factors again, right? So even a 600 to 700 level question will test you at this level, right? So if your preparation for the last 2 to 3 months has not helped you solve this question, you probably have to review some topics quickly if you are still looking for taking the exam, right, in the next 1 month or so. So Mangesh, what exactly do you want me to explain? Do you want me to explain it from the start again, or are there parts that you did not understand? So if you can hold on this question, we will come back on to your doubt when we do the Q&A segment. All right. Okay. So I don't want to take a one size fits all approach on this webinar. That's why I said, okay, I'll take a two-pronged strategy based on your test date. And I knew that a one size fits all approach will not work, because I know for a fact that not all of you are looking to take the GMAT in the next 15 days, right? So I decided that I'll create like two broad categories, right? And go about discussing the last minute preparation tips that you can follow based on which category you fall in, right? So I created two categories. One category, I mean, the categories are in front of you to see. One category is where you are like 15 days or less than 15 days away from your GMAT date. And the second category is when you are like a month away from your GMAT date. Now, like 15 days here is not like rigid. 15 can be like 15 to 20, right? So what applies to anyone who's taking it in 15 days will also apply to somebody who's taking it in 20 days. Similarly, 30 here could probably go to 35. I mean, if you're trying to take it, let's say on October 15th, that's okay. It's not like 30 days is sacrosanct, right? So based on which category you fall under, right, you would probably want to focus on the tips that I'm going to discuss one by one, right? So first category that I'll obviously take up is for people who are very, very close to their GMAT date, right? That makes sense, because you are the guys who will require like immediate help with the next 15 days of your prep, right? So what do you do in the next 15 days? Assuming that you have done what all I discussed previously, assuming you have done the OG, you have revised all your concepts, you've analyzed the OG, you've gone through the tracker sheet, you have identified your weak areas, talked to your instructor, strengthen your weak areas, then you have done time drills from the review books, you have taken a couple of mock tests, you have done most of the sectional tests. What else could you do in the last 15 days? Before I tell that, I would like to say that if you're in the last 15 days of your preparation, you should be able to solve this question in the next 2 minutes. In fact, I would say if you're able to solve this question within 2 minutes, I would say you're on the right track. I would use that as a measure. So, can we do that? 2 minutes on this question? Go ahead. Time has started. So a few of you have already seen this question. Excuse me. All right, half time. All right, that's 2 minutes. Okay, quite a few of you got to E in less than a minute, some of you between 1 to 2 minutes, and that's encouraging. That's encouraging for all of us as a group. For every positive integer, positive even integer n, the function h of n is defined as the product of all the even integers from 2 to n. So for example, if I take h of like 5, h of 6 rather, this will be the product of all the numbers from 2 to 6. H of 10 would be 2 into 4 into 6 into 8 into 10. That's how I understand the question data. If P is the smallest prime factor of H of 100 plus 1. Now for me to find out H of 100 plus 1, I'll first have to find out H of 100. H of 100 would be 2 into 4 into 6, so on till 100. You take a 2 common from all of them and bear in mind that this is 2 power 100 because this is a multiplication and not addition. You'll be left with 1 into 2 into 3, so on till 50. So this is your H of 100. Now you know that the biggest prime number that can divide H of 100 would be a 47, right? So 47 would be the biggest prime number that can completely divide H of 100. Now, H of 100 plus 1 is the number that we're looking at. If you look at the number line, you will definitely agree with me if I say H of 100 and H of 100 plus 1 are consecutive numbers. And from your knowledge of number properties, you know that any two consecutive numbers are always co-prime. And because these two numbers are co-prime, it means that they will not have any common factor except 1, which means if 47 is a factor of H of 100, 47 is definitely not the factor of H of 100 plus 1. Therefore, something greater than 47 should be a factor of H of 100 plus 1. If it is greater than 47, it's naturally greater than 40. So if you were able to solve this question in about 2 minutes time, I would say that you are on the right track to taking the exam in the next 15 to 20 days. So what is it that you have to do in the next 15 to 20 days? The first thing that I would recommend you to do that is analyze your timed drills that you have done from the quant review, right? Remember the quant review has about 320 odd questions. So what we recommend always is, we recommend students to take 31 questions of quant and try to attempt them in 62 minutes. That's what is called a time drill, right? And when you're picking these 31 questions, right, you tend to pick it up from different topics and you pick it up from different levels, right? In the quant review, remember the questions are arranged in increasing order of difficulty level. So you have the easier questions coming at the start and the slightly more difficult questions coming towards the end. So the idea of doing a time drill is to create a sectional test and answer it in about 62 minutes. So if you are doing the last few timed drills, the first thing that you can do in the next 2-3 days is to analyze your time drills thoroughly and come up with maybe a summary of what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, right? So make a list of your most common mistakes. In our experience, the most common problem areas are topics like number systems, inequalities, PNC probability, rates, word problems, and geometry. if like more than two of these areas feature on your list, do a quick review and see why you are getting questions wrong in these areas. If you want to revise some of those concepts, do it and try as much as you can to plug the gaps. Right? It's very improbable that you'll have difficulties in all the areas. Typically, if you're able to solve the previous question, you will have difficulty in like two or three areas. Right? When you summarize your mistakes, you will have a fair idea of where you're going wrong more often. Right? Go back to that particular topic, do a quick review of all the concepts and the strategies, and see if you have missed out on certain concepts. Learn that concept, come back to the problems that you did a mistake in, solve them again, and see how you perform. That's how you plug the gap, right? So try to implement your learnings in all the subsequent time drills. Ideally, you should have completed your time drills by now, but if there are like a couple of time drills left, the learnings from your review should be implemented in the last two time drills. Okay. After you're done with the time drills, you can take up the advanced tests from the sectional testing platform. There are a few advanced sectional tests, fewer, I would say, on the testing platform, but I would recommend that you do all the tests. And remember, you have 3 attempts on all the tests. If your accuracy rate is like below 70% on the first attempt, I would still recommend that you take another attempt and try to improve it to at least 85%, right? After you're done with the sectional tests, right, this should ideally take you about a day. I mean, these are shorter tests. So even if you look at like 5 tests, you'll be solving about like 40 to 50 questions, which can be done in about 3 to 4 hours of time. So I'm assuming that any of you who is taking the test in the next 15 days is probably on a sabbatical or has taken a break or you have taken leave, and therefore you can afford to spend like 4 to 6 hours a day preparing for the GMAT, out of which I'm assuming half of it may be for quant, right? So if you spend about 3 hours, right, on one day, or if you want to spend like 2 hours on 2 days, you can finish off all the advanced sectional tests on quant from the testing platform. Okay. After you're done with this, please start taking the mock tests. If you're a CrackVerbal student, you know that you have access to the 800score.com tests. These are very good tests for you to do timed practice, but don't expect them to show you what you may get on the GMAT. In fact, the official tests also are not like the closest indicator of what you'll get on the GMAT. There will always be a delta of like 30 or 40, right? So if the official mock tests have a delta of 30 and 40, I think you should not expect the 800 score mock test to give you a realistic indicator of what you'll get on the GMAT. So utilize the 800 score mock tests for timed practice and to maybe implement your strategies, your problem solving strategies, your time management strategies, how to pace yourself, how not to run out of time. Or I have also seen students saying, okay, I finished the section, the verbal section, like 3 minutes before the timer ran out. That's also not good, right? So use the 800score.com mock test for doing timed practice, right? You can probably take one mock test every 2 days or every 3 days. And whenever you take a mock test, please analyze. Analysis is very, very important. If you spend like 3 hours taking a mock test, you will have to do a mandatory analysis of at least an hour or an hour and a half. And when you analyze, it's not only the wrong answer that you analyze and figure out, okay, I got this wrong, what did I do wrong here? I would say you will also have to analyze the questions that you got right, but when you were solving that question, you had no idea about what is the last few steps, right? You either guessed or you got the answer by fluke. Those are still wrong answers. You were lucky that you got the answer right there. So if I analyze a mock test, I will not only analyze the wrong answers, but I'll also analyze the right answers of which I was not sure of, right? Initially, take the 800 score mock test, and as you are closer to your exam, take the official mock test. If you have taken exams 1 and 2 already, more than once, I would recommend that you subscribe to at least 3 and 4 or 5 and 6 and take the fresh mock test maybe when you're a week away from the GMAT. So summarizing, if you have 15 days, people, quickly complete your time drills, do a review of the concepts that you still are having difficulties in, try to implement them in the last few time drills, try to implement them in the sectional tests, and as you take sectional tests, start taking mock tests in parallel, once every 2 days or once every 3 days, right? So that is what you can do if you have like 15 days. You have that much time. You can't do much more than this, right? This is assuming that you have done most of the things that we mentioned earlier, right? Okay. Abhishek, when I say time drills, you have to create them yourself. You'll have to pick the questions by yourself, and that gives you a good opportunity to pick questions from different topics, from different difficulty levels. So you can try to simulate what happens on the GMAT. On one day, if you want to do a time drill, right, you might want to pick more number of algebra questions. Maybe on another day, you might want to pick more number of must be, could be questions. Or maybe another day you want to pick more geometry questions because you don't know what exactly will come on the day, on the D day. So you try and choose as many permutations and combinations as you can from the quant review book, right? And use your sense of judgment, okay, to pick questions from different topics and different difficulty levels. Yes, so if you have the online, questions from Wiley, you can create timed tests on the Wiley platform. Okay, Rainer and Akanksha, just hold on to your thoughts. I'll come back to you during the Q&A segment. Okay. So if you are like, yes, Chetan, advanced OG questions can be done during the last 15 days as well, right? So if you have more than like 4 hours a day for quant, you can still do advanced questions, but ideally you should have been done with the advanced questions by now. Ideally, if you're not done, you can still go ahead and do the advanced questions in the last 15 days. Okay, so if you're in the second category, if you say, I have a month, I still have 30 to 40 days for my preparation. I'm not in a hurry to take it in the next 15 days. What could you do? What could your strategy be? We'll discuss that after we kind of solve this question. I'm using this again as a metric to tell you that if you're able to kind of solve this question, it's a good measure of telling yourself, okay, hey, I'm probably 1 month away from taking the GMAT. Go ahead, please attempt this question. I'll give you 2 minutes and tell me what your answers are. I'll tell you when the 2 minutes are done. Only then post your answers in the chat window. half the time. You have 1 minute left. All right, people, that's 2 minutes. You can post your answers now. Okay, most of you say it is a E. A lot of you say it is a E. All right. Okay. So this is a question I would estimate you would be able to solve if you are done with the resources like the official guide. You have done the official guide of most questions on the official guide. You're done with the easy and the intermediate tests on the testing platform, and you probably started doing the time drills from the quant review book. So this much of exposure to quant, GMAT quant type of questions would probably give you the ammunition to be able to solve a question of this level. Okay. What is the sum of all possible distinct remainders when the cubes of all primes are divided by 6? Now, if there is a question on prime numbers asking you about divisibility by 6, a very natural thought process should tell you that primes greater than 3, right, can be written in the form of 6k plus 1 or 6k minus 1, where k is an integer. So you would ask me, what about 2 and 3? So of course 2 and 3 don't follow this rule. But we are required to find out the cube of all the prime numbers. So we'll have to do that manually. 2 cube by 6 gives me a remainder of 2. 3 cube by 6 gives me a remainder of 3. But for all the other prime numbers, I can just cube this. 6k plus 1, the whole cube, would give me a cube plus b cube plus 3ab into a plus b. Now if I divide this by 6, I know that this part will be divisible, this part will be divisible, and this part will also be divisible. So the remainder that comes out of this will be a 1. If I do 6k minus 1 the whole cube, the only difference will be I'll have a 6k whole cube minus 1 minus 18k into 6k minus 1 divided by 6. So we have a negative remainder here. You need to know what to do with a negative remainder. When you have a negative remainder, you add it to the divisor, right? Whatever negative remainder you get, you add it to the divisor to get a positive remainder. So the remainder here would be 5. So how many distinct remainders can we get? We can get 4 distinct remainders. What are they? There are 2, there are 3, there are 1, and there are 5. And that's exactly what I've put in the options here. But I want the sum of all these remainders. So the sum of all these numbers will clearly be 2 plus 3, 5, 5 plus 1, 6, 6 plus 5, 11. So if you took this approach, it means that you have your concepts are fairly strong, and you were able to apply it in a situation where you had about 2 minutes. If you took the plugging in approach, it still means that you thought of an alternative strategy, which you probably learned over the last 2-3 months solving GMAT type of questions. Either ways, it tells me that you have done most of the groundwork that is required, and therefore you are ready to do these things for the next 15 days. So if you have a month, I would say during the first 15 days, starting from now, please revise all the quant concepts and make a summary of the important points in each topic. Typically, this should take about 2 to 3 days. Okay, maybe 1 day for arithmetic, 1 day for stats, and 1 day for algebra and geometry. Right? If you look at arithmetic, you have topics like numbers, ratios and percents. Then you have profit loss and interest. Then you have rates. So if you sit down for like 2 to 3 hours, go through the concepts that you learned, you may have made notes, go through the notes. You can make a summary, quick summary of all the important points that you have learned, your own takeaways, right, in about 2 hours time, right? Spread across a period of 2 to 3 days, you would have summarized a lot of important points from all concepts in quant. If you, from the review that you do, if you feel there are gray areas, you still have time to take help from an instructor or a tutor to get them clarified, right? This is the next step. Also, don't forget to make a list of your strong areas. Very often I see students focus a lot on strengthening their weaknesses. You also have to consolidate your strengths, right? Don't forget to do that. Identify your strong areas as well, and focus on strengthening them further. So if you feel you're very good at geometry, do more geometry questions to the extent that you can say, hey, I can practically solve any geometry question that can come up on the GMAT now, right? That's the extent to which you need to further strengthen your strong areas. And of course, that entirely depends on the review that you do in the next 2 to 3 days. After you're done with this, you can also start with the timed drills from quant. I've already told you how to go about doing timed drills. So if there are 320 questions and every time drill is 31 questions per drill, I think you can create about 10 drills and go about doing one drill per day, which means you can complete the entire quant review book in the next 15 days. Considering that you would have taken about 3-4 days initially to do the revision, you can use the next 10 days to do the drills. And after every drill that you do in a day, you will have to analyze and review the drill. So the same thing applies to you also, right? And whatever you learn from one particular drill, try to implement your learnings in the subsequent drills. So that's common as well. Now, moving on to the next 15 days. So the first 15 days went in revising concepts and doing time drills. In the last 15 days, I think we come back to a similar pattern. And the pattern is you take the advanced sectional test from the testing platform. Try to do this over a period of 1 day or 2 days. And after you do this, you can, I'll just skip this question that I have here because we are running out of time. And you can take up the mock test as I've highlighted in the previous segment also. Once every 2 to 3 days, you could take the 800 score mock test. And when you are like 7 to 10 days away from your GMAT, you could also take the official mock test. This one, if you have like 2 official mock tests, I would take it once every 3 days. If you have more than 2, I would probably take one in every 2 days and analyze. I would do that. And also you can solve the advanced questions from the GMAT official book if you have subscribed to it. If you have similar resources to the advanced GMAT book, they are good to go as well. Okay, and this is what you can do over the last 15 days. So the last 15 days for you guys looks very, very similar to people who are in the first category, right? Except that for you in the second category, you still have 15 days to fine tune your concepts, strategies, and plug the gaps. That is where you have a slight edge over the others, if I have to argue that way. But net, I think there is very little to distinguish between category 1 and category 2, except that maybe people in category 1 probably started off their preparation maybe 15-20 days earlier, or they ended up covering more ground during the initial phase compared to some of you in the second category. All right, that is what I would advise to do in the last 15 days. And last but not the least, it's all well, we always hope for the best as human beings, we plan for the best, but you also need to be prepared for the worst, as great minds say, right? So if at the end of like 20-25 days you are not having a good feeling in your gut and data is there to support it, you need to have an exit plan, right? You need to be able to bail out and say, okay, it's true that I wanted to give the GMAT in the next 30 to 40 days, but if I'm not ready, then it's better to like take some more time, prepare well, do the things that we discussed, and then take the GMAT. So how to know if you're ready to take the GMAT? I'd like to discuss this in the opposite way by telling you what are the indicators that you are not ready to take the GMAT, right? So if more than one of these things are happening in your preparation after 20-25 days, you should probably bail out and say, hey, I'll give myself another 15-20 days extra and take it later. So indicators, your mock test score has kind of plateaued. Earlier, you probably started off at a 600, improved to like a 640, went up to a 660, and then suddenly your mock test scores started coming up to be 660 to 680, most of them, right? That essentially means your strategy is not working, you have gray areas, there are concepts that you don't know, and you end up making similar kind of mistakes on certain kind of problems. So if your mock test scores have plateaued, and worst cases if they are going down, right, in the next 30 days, give yourself more time. And after 20-25 days, when you are like 7 to 10 days away from the GMAT, it is very natural for any of us to feel nervous. Nervousness is natural, it is required, I would argue. But if you keep feeling excessively nervous and you keep wondering whether you'll do well on the GMAT, and you have your mock test scores to back you up, right? I mean, this point here is directly connected to the first point, right? If you have this consistent nagging feeling that, okay, I might not do well on the GMAT and my mock test scores are like proof for that, then I think it's the right time for you to decide that you want to extend the date. I mean, the third point is again in some way related to the first point. Your accuracy rate is still in the 60% to 80% range in most of the core topics, despite having done the OG and despite having done the sectional test and the time drills. You're not able to improve beyond the 80%. Time to bail out and spend more time on improving this accuracy rate to at least like a 85% to 90% and take more time. Very important point. You might see that there is no pattern in the mistakes that you make on the test. One day you mess up on CR, the other day your SC goes down. One day you solve all the numbers questions right, the other day you get most of the numbers questions wrong. Then it means your strategies are not working, your consistency has not come up to the mark, and you still need to spend more time plugging these gaps. Timing aspect. If when you're taking the mock test, on every mock test, if you're left with very less time for the last few questions, sometimes it may so happen that some of you had to leave out the last one or two questions, then it's a clear indicator that you're still not pacing yourself well. And if this is happening like 7 to 10 days away from your GMAT, time to pay attention to the red flags and take more time. So these are some of the indicators that we have seen in our experience of having talked to a lot of students who had decided to take the GMAT and came to us when they had like 10 days, 15 days saying, okay, some of these are happening. We had to convince them that it is better to take extra time, prepare more, and then give the test at a later stage. So have an exit strategy in place, right? And the GMAT is quite an expensive test. You would, more than the financial aspect, it's expensive in terms of the confidence that you will lose if you don't end up getting your score, right? Look at all aspects. Yeah, and it kind of eats up into your time, because once you take the GMAT and you don't get a score, you will invariably spend, after you take the GMAT, I am pretty sure that a lot of us will take like 7 to 10 days, right, to maybe introspect, figure out what went wrong. Then we'll take another 5 days to 7 days evaluating what we should do next. Should I go for personal tutoring? Should I prepare harder by myself? Half a month would have gone, right? All the resources that you put in to prepare for the GMAT would have gone. You would have put in a lot of time, 3 to 4 months. That also will become a bad investment. So it's always better to give one good shot or maybe maximum 2 good shots at the GMAT rather than taking it more than 2 times, right? So have a exit strategy in place. And if you feel after 20, 25 days, some of these things are happening, be honest with yourself and take more time. Don't be stubborn. So that's all I had, people, on today's webinar. If some of you need help with your GMAT prep, I see that some of you told me that you are like starting with your GMAT preparation. Some of you are coming towards the end of your GMAT preparation. Some of you are like in the middle. Just wanted to say that we have solutions for most of you. If you're starting off with your GMAT prep, you can look at taking up either our live at home sessions or the online course. If you are in the middle phase of your preparation and you have got scores, mock test scores in the range of 600 to 650, and you want to fast track your preparation, take the GMAT in the next 1 month, 1.5 months, and improve your score by maybe 50 to 100 points, you can look at taking up our advanced GMAT course, which is purely meant for people who are in the 600 to 650 range and want to climb to the next level, that is the 700 to 750 range. If you are somebody who says, Arvind, I have 15 days, I'll take the GMAT in the next 15 days, tops, 1 month tops, right? And I want help with applications, that's something that we can help you with as well. So whichever way you look at it, there are solutions that we can offer. And I hope the webinar that we conducted here has given you some sort of an idea of how we operate, how we interact with our students. And in some way, I hope it has given you an idea of the quality of content that we have in store. So we have pasted some links in the chat box. My colleague Rachel has done that. Please make a note of the links, probably copy them into a Word file or a text pad. You can use these links to have a look at the different courses that are there on offer, and after that you can take a call on what you want to do. So at this stage, I like to take up questions. I see quite a few questions that have been put in the Q&A box. So I'll slowly shift my focus now to the Q&A box. However, if any of you have posted a question in the chat box, may I request you to transfer those questions to the Q&A box, please, so that I look at one place rather than switching between the Q&A and the chat. Raja Kashyap, sir, is it advisable to give the mock just a day before the actual GMAT? Not advisable. I would recommend that you take a break from studies 1 or 2 days before the GMAT, right? And I would recommend that you have enough rest, eat quality food, and practice some relaxation techniques before 1 or 2 days before the actual exam. Because in our experience, anxiety and stress can be great levelers in the GMAT. Also, the downside of taking a mock just 1 day before the actual GMAT is if the scores don't come up the way you expected them to be, it might create a huge dent in your confidence. And you don't want to go to the test center with your confidence at the halfway mark, right? So not recommended. I would not advise you to do that. So Santosh, I think I already answered those questions. There are about 430 questions in the OG, by the way, Santosh, not 320. There are about 430 in OG 19. There are about 440, 445 in OG 2020. That's almost like 120 more than what you said, right? Also understand that you have the quant review book, which has about 320 questions. I'm guessing that you were talking of those 320 and not the OG. You also have like 350 questions on CrackVerbal sectional testing platform. So that's a neat 1,000 questions that you have, right? You can also go on to GMAT Club, use the filters to find questions from the old official guides, right? You can, if you're okay, you can purchase the advanced official questions book. That'll give you another 150 quant questions. So all in all, you have about 1,500 quant questions neat, all of them official for you to practice. I don't think you should look anything beyond those 1,500. Amal, we have a list of advanced questions. The advanced questions, current and retired. A lot of them are questions, the current questions are the questions that you will see on the current mock tests, official ones. So you might want to solve them when you are like a week away from the test, right? So that you don't end up inflating your mock test scores. The retired questions, again, you can solve them in the last 15 days. Okay, because the retired questions are also questions that have been retired either from the older GMAT or the older mock tests. And GMAT has this strange practice of reviving some of those retired questions. So you might want to be a little careful and therefore practice the retired and the current questions in the last 15 days. Joseph, what is recommended for someone of Q45 range who is going to give the GMAT in under 3 days? Very hard to say, Joseph. I would recommend you to do a quick review, a quick recap of all the concepts, right? Try to solve like 20 questions on all the 3 days. And also try to maintain like a good accuracy rate. Improve your strategies save time on the easier questions and try to spend that time on the difficult questions is all I can say, because you have 3 days and 3 days is very, very short. What is your view on practicing questions on GMAT Club with the timer? Absolutely fine. As long as you're practicing official questions, mostly, I think that's a very good place to not only practice questions, but also to have insight into how different people solve questions. Rainer, there is no tracker for the review books purely from because of the fact that the review books are meant to do time drills. We give you a tracker for the OG because when you're doing the OG, you're still in your initial phase of preparation. And that's where you're solving questions one after the other, sequentially, right? And you're solving questions there topic wise. And that is why you have a tracker to find out, okay, these are the topics that I did more mistakes in. Whereas by the time you've reached the quant review, right, you should be in a phase where you can say, okay, I'm confident about 85% of the topics that I learned, and therefore I'll go about picking questions from random areas. And that's why there's no tracker for the review books. Okay, so Jayantan, I hope I've kind of answered that question already, right? You can use the GMAT Club portal to practice official questions after the OG. So Tushar, fall 2021 is quite some time away, I would believe. You are in the 600 to 620 range. So you have the luxury of giving yourself at least a month and a half, right? Before you start seeing your mock test scores going up by, let's say, 50 to 80 points. So early November, early to mid-November is what I'd be looking at if I were you. Jaskira, I finished OG about 70% through with QR. I find that my accuracy has increased, yet I have time problem. Yeah, so Jaskira, the whole point of doing time drills, right, is to pace yourself well. You find yourself at 2 minutes 30 marks, 30 seconds mark with medium hard questions. I think that's good, right? That's not a bad timing at all. You can't expect to solve hard questions in 2 minutes, all hard questions in 2 minutes. It's very, very similar to will you take 2 minutes to solve an easy question? I don't think so, right? So 2 minutes, 30 marks to 2 minutes, 30 seconds is like a good ballpark figure for you at this stage. You probably need to cut it down to between 2 and 230. But at this stage, if you're between 230 to 3, I would say, I would argue that you're in a good place. So Sanket, please, I request you to please hold on, right? Because I have to go back to the questions, and I'd like to give you time to look at the question and ask any questions that you may have. That's why I'm taking your question a little later so that I can answer your questions specifically because they're like based on a question, right? I request your patience on this. So Aniket, your MBA.com practice test scores are much better than 800 score tests. I mean, that's how it is supposed to be because the 800 score.com tests are what you call them. They are practice tests, right? They are meant to expose you to those more difficult questions that you may not find all the time on the MBA.com tests. So there is nothing to worry too much if you are getting lower scores on the 800 score.com test. It's natural at the start, but as you go along, you should try to also improve in your 800 score tests. Chetan, the CrackVerbal advanced documents, some of the questions overlap with the testing platform, some of them don't. So I would recommend that you solve the testing platform tests as quickly as you can and then shift to the advanced documents, as I told you earlier. Retired and current questions to be done when you are like 15 to 20 days away from the GMAT. Abhishek, I would recommend you to go through the FAQs on MBA.com. Okay. How many days in advance should you book the GMAT exam? Such questions, find the best answers on the FAQs in the MBA.com website. Christian, the fact that you've got a 49 in the last 3 mock tests, I'm assuming that they were official mock tests, is, I mean, you can look at it both ways. Positive is your score has been consistent. The negative aspect is you're probably making more mistakes. You can get a 49 when you have like 8 to 12 mistakes. So you need to cut down on the number of mistakes you're doing and identify areas where you're making more mistakes. There will typically be 2 or 3 topics that you make more mistakes in, right? And if you have observed a pattern, that's good. It means that you can look at those topics and get help, seek help on those topics. You should also look at how you are solving your DS questions, because doing well on data sufficiency questions, especially in the difficult domain, is very, very important to get a 51. So Akanksha, I think I've already addressed that, right? When should we go through the OG tracker wrong questions? I think we addressed this. So I said you should have ideally done it by now, right? If you have done it by now, only then you can say I'm in my last leg of my preparation. If you have not done it, I would argue that you still have to give yourself another 45 to 60 days to take the GMAT, ideally. And Akanksha, it's very hard to say how much time you should ideally spend on revising these questions. There is nothing ideal in your in anyone's preparation for the GMAT. Everyone's preparation is different, right? You can't have a one size fits all. You should spend as much time as you require to completely tackle the areas that you're going wrong with and bring them up to a stage where you can say, okay, I have plugged most of the gaps, right? So it might take you like 7 days. It might take somebody else 10 days. It might take me 4 days. It completely depends on how much time you're able to spend per day and how much you do on that particular day. So Abhishek, you can, we have a quant basics module in the CrackVerbal online course, and we have a verbal basics document that we give out for working on your grammar skills. So the answer is a yes. You can start from the basics. Mangesh, never ask a can question to me, because I will always answer with a yes. Can you give GMAT after doing CAT preparation? Yes, why not? It's a question of ability. It's a question of a certain possibility taking place. Can you give GMAT after GRE preparation? Yes, why not? There are so many things in common between GMAT and GRE, but at the same time, there are so many things that are different from GMAT and GRE. As long as you're able to understand the differences, appreciate the similarities, I think there's nothing wrong in preparing for the GMAT after GRE. Sayanti, I would request you to please post your questions in the chat, in the Q&A box, please. That's something that I said at, when I started the Q&A session as well, right? How to make notes or error log, like writing a wrong question and answer or noting down the concepts, and after how much time should we revise them? Again, anonymous attendee, this is like a generic question. I can't answer this with a single answer, right? how to make notes. I'm really very sorry, I can't give you one approach to make notes. You make notes that you can understand, right? If I make notes, I will write down all the important topics that I want to remember, whereas you might want to write down each and every detail. So that depends. I want you to use your sense of judgment there. And again, after how much time should you revise them? It entirely depends on how much you remember after an extended period of time. There are people who can remember something that they learned like for like 15 days. After 15 days, they forget. So you might want to revise after 15 days. But if you are somebody who can remember a concept even after 3 months of reading it, you might want to revise after 3 months. If not solved all OG Quant questions, but did CV platform questions, mock test, 800 score ones, and GMAT Club random OG questions, GMAT Club test topic wise as per week areas, want to give 15 days. Is it fine? Accuracy in mock 47 as per last test. Sayanti, what exactly do you mean accuracy in mock 47 as per last test? Does it mean that you have a 47% accuracy in the mock test, or does it mean that you got a 47 in the mock test? So, Krishan, I told you that a time drill is obviously a mixed bag of questions. So, when you say miscellaneous time drill, that's what I'm assuming that you're talking of. And that's what I suggested in the first place. I said do a mixed bag time drill. So, if you have not solved all the quant OG questions, Sayanti, I mean, that's something you should have done ideally by now. You say you have 15 days. This is not the right time for you to keep solving the OG questions, right? Because ideally you would want to be in a situation where you're doing mock tests and you're doing sectional tests rather than solving the OG Quant questions. So I'd advise you to take up the official mock tests, and if you still have the 800 score mock tests left, please take them up and analyze. That is all you could do at this stage. If you say I have 15 days. All right. So let's go back to the question that you wanted to have a look at, Sanket. So, right. So this is the first question that we took. Okay. Yes. So what did you not understand here? What exactly do you want me to explain? I'm sure you understood at least half of the first half at least. And give me an idea of what kind of preparation you have done. At what stage are you? Have you done the official guides? Have you done the easy and the intermediate sectional tests? So are you a CrackVerbal student? Have you taken up our online course or the live at home sessions, or just join? Okay. What course have you taken up, Sanket? The online course or the live at home sessions? Okay. So have you, what are the quant sessions that you have completed by now? Okay. How are you managing your quant preparation? What are the resources through which you're going through? Of course, like you solved all the OG questions, but where did you learn the concepts from? Because the OG questions will not teach you concepts, they'll just give you a repository of questions. So there has to be something, some book or some course from which you must have learned the concepts. Okay. So how do you identify co-prime numbers, Sanket? What are the criterion or what are the criteria on which co-prime numbers depend? Yes, so that is the definition for a set of numbers to be co-prime. But under what cases will a pair of numbers be co-prime? Okay, what else? So you're saying any two consecutive numbers will be co-prime. Is that always true? Are you sure of that? Okay, what else? When else will two numbers be co-prime, please? What are the other conditions? Okay. So you acknowledge that these two numbers are co-primes. Okay. So if they are co-primes, can they have the same common factor? I mean, can they have the same prime number as a common factor? Okay. So can 47 divide 50 factorial? It can, right? Yeah. Yeah, no problem. You're welcome. My pleasure. All right. Any other questions, people? Okay, you want me to like show you the third question? Sure. Yep. Okay. What is it that you have? Cool. All right, people. Thanks a lot. It was my pleasure conducting this webinar, and it was nice to connect with all of you and share whatever little I had to share on this topic. But I hope that it has ended up helping you in some way to decide what you want to do over the next 15 to 30 days. If it has, I'm happy that I've done my job today. Um, do look at our YouTube channels, and you can connect with us on LinkedIn. Do subscribe to our YouTube channel, and please like our videos. We're also present on Instagram and Facebook. You can add us to your list. I hope to see you in another similar webinar in a few weeks or a few months from now. Till then, thanks a lot for being on this session, and thanks a lot for being so patient and such wonderful audience till now.